I think it is an age of information warfare, and we're seeing that as the situation is escalating, the amount of information out there, it's actually humanly impossible to fact check everything right now, and fact checkers are taking time, which is why people are going to AI tools to fact check things or looking at. There were also reports around local Kashmiris in Jammu and Kashmir sheltering terrorists, Pakistan army resignations happening post attack, and the removal of the northern commander of India from his post the attack. So in times like these, I think it's important to do your fact checking on your own as well. Blocking all accounts in a blanket ban or personalities that are famous in India is something to be alarming about, because it sends a trend in the global south and particularly South Asia. And this can have a chilling effect for other countries as well. But we've seen in the past that there's been a lot of hate speech by both nations, and particularly misogynist content shared online. For instance, we saw a lot of images from Gaza being used in the context of when these escalations happened in Pakistan.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the DigiPod. My name is Farieha Aziz. Today I'm joined by Seerat, who is with the Digital Rights Foundation. DRF recently came out with a report on the misinformation following the Pahalgam attack and everything that's followed and the rising conflict at where, as we are seeing, there's still a continuing escalation war of narratives. But in that, the truth is a casualty as well. And a lot of times, what is being circulated, particularly on social media, it becomes a cause for exceeding tensions and escalation, and also forming perceptions of what is happening or what the response by each state should be. Sira, can you walk us through the report that DRF has put out?
Yes, so we've come up with two analyses. One is an investigative short report on the geo-blocking of content, particularly for Pakistan users, for of Pakistan users for the Indian audience. And what was interesting to see when this ban came out was that geo-blocking has been done in the past by a lot of platforms, particularly around conflicts, and we've seen that happen in Germany when they want to block extremist Nazi content, but also in the Ukraine and Russia conflict. But here, we saw that 17 accounts were banned initially, and these were YouTube channels and X accounts post the Pahalgam attack. And then, apart from that, we saw that there was a lot of activity happening on social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. And while this was only subjected to news outlets and journalists, this practice of geo-blocking content was then increased towards Pakistani entertainers, Pakistani entertainment actors and actresses, and the ban actually exceeded to the amount that it usually is. Now, we've seen it in the past that it's usually based on content that is from news channels and journalists, but this time we saw the entertainment industry also being a part of it. And another interesting observation that we made in our report was that while these bans were happening, and now that we are post the airstrikes that have happened in Pakistan, now they've also extended to accounts that are usually have a smaller following, and particularly have following in a manner that they might have shared very limited content on their accounts, but despite that, their accounts are not being viewed by the Indian audience. And our report basically highlights what the jurisdiction says in the Indian law. The India has local laws that do say that they can remove content like this, and social media companies have to comply. The farmers' protest back in 2021, we saw that some social media companies did push back and tried not to remove certain contents, but then they also had to oblige to the local laws. And talking to journalists here in Pakistan, we spoke to Asma Shirazi in the report, and she highlighted that this has cost a lot of, this is an attack to ethical journalism. particularly across the globe, and particularly on the fact that her 20% of her viewership has been decreased. And despite the fact that her viewership in Pakistan has increased, but this is an attack on press freedom and freedom of expression as well. And while the international law itself says that under the ICCPR, if necessary security situations arise, countries are can block content like this. But on the other hand, we also need to look at it from a manner of necessity and proportionality. Blocking all accounts in a blanket ban, or personalities that are famous in India, is something to be alarming about, because it sends a trend in the global south and particularly South Asia. And this can have a chilling effect for other countries as well.
Seerat, the report obviously highlights specific examples of disinformation and misinformation. For example, the couple who was in Kashmir, and allegedly, I mean, people were saying that they had been killed in the airstrikes, but then there was a video. What are some of the examples that the report cites, other examples that it cites? Because they tend to have, I mean, in terms of forming perceptions and also what responses then people want in the fans and the flames of discord that they end up then fanning. A lot of it has to do with what is being put out there and consumed on social media.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question, because the misinformation and disinformation was also all over the place post attack. And some of the very few popular ones that we were able to see were that there was a attack on and a Pakistani military operation happening in India. One disinformation that we found was that there was a final video of the couple that was allegedly killed, the one that you mentioned, that was quite popular. There were also reports around local Kashmiris in Jammu and Kashmir sheltering terrorists, Pakistan army resignations happening post attack, and the removal of the northern commander of India from his post the attack. And apart from this, there were a lot of numbers that were misquoted as well. So when initially there were the number of casualties couldn't be determined, there were a lot of numbers that were mixed up. A lot of people were also speculating that this is an attack that India has done themselves. So the misinformation was all over the place. But what was interesting was that a lot of generative AI tools were also used in the process, and you would see deep fakes of people from the attack, particularly pictures from the attacks that were used that were very graphic in nature, but also showed the amount of violence that took place over there in India. And there was an altered video of, for instance, Zakir Naik, who said, who is an Islamic scholar, who said that Quran instructs Muslims to kill Hindus. That was shared widely by a lot of people. And a lot of people were also relying on AI tools for fact checking. So they would use X's Grok or ChatGPT to actually verify a lot of pieces of information. And we're looking at that right now as well, while the situation is escalating between the two countries.
How challenging is it, though, to cross-check or fact-check information such as this? I mean, some of it is, tech-based, and so these tools are able to, but then some of this has to do with competing narratives, and
Yeah.
you would require either, official, statements, etc. And also, particularly, I mean, for example, currently also as the situation is developing and a lot of citizens will, possibly post on social media, we can hear firing or we can hear shots or we can hear sounds. Now, you don't know what that is, but certainly
Yeah.
something happening. So in real time, how can you try to verify what is happening? And what have you seen the platform's role in all of this? This has panned out for weeks. How have the platforms responded, and what does the report observe?
Yeah. So I think it is an age of information warfare, and we're seeing that as the situation is escalating, the amount of information out there, it's actually humanly impossible to fact check everything right now, and fact checkers are taking time, which is why people are going to AI tools to fact check things, or looking at other sources. But I feel like it's very important in this time for the audience and for people to rely on reliable sources like Dawn, like Geo, like other reputable organizations who have been doing the work, and also not jump to conclusions. I know that the environment is not making that easy for us, but at the same time it's important to rely on verifiable news information and making sure that not to spread a lot of misinformation that creates a lot of panic. We've already been seeing that since last night as well, by the way. I mean, the report covers part of the period before the airstrikes, but since the airstrikes have happened, we've seen a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and we're collecting all that evidence on our end. But we're also seeing that it's very, very hard at the moment to fact check everything. So fact checkers also have are taking their time. And the report, for one interesting aspect in the report is it looks at social media platforms' performance during this time, and particularly when misinformation has been shared, what are they doing about it? All platforms, including X, including Google, including Meta, have obviously international obligations, but also community guidelines within themselves that require them to remove harmful content. But we've seen in the past that there's been a lot of hate speech by both nations, and particularly misogynist content shared online, particularly regarding the operations that have been taking place, but also for the victims who have been part of who have been part of these catastrophic events. And uh, the attacks have been there. I mean, what I mean to say is the content has been up there. It has not been removed, despite the fact that it violates the guidelines of these platforms. And while we are monitoring the situation, and DRF's digital security helpline has been escalating content to platforms, we've also formed a number of guidelines for them and told them that in this particular time, first of all, it's important that they have transparency reports and reports that are very much in detail, that talks about the kind of government requests that are coming in when content is being taken down. And this has happened in the past as well, that bodies like Oversight Board has asked the asked social media platforms to be more detailed. And we've also asked them to have crisis centers and local experts with trusted partner programs, or actors who are actually involved in the process and who can verify news as soon as possible, and engage with regional experts on platform governance and assess the human rights implications that are imposed at this time when a conflict is taking place. But for now, I would say platforms need to do a lot of their own work. There has been a lot of talks, and we talked to an Indian journalist in the report who said that part of the reason platforms are acting and doing as the Indian state is saying is because there is market pressure as well. India is a big market. They have a great market share. They have a lot of social media users. So the impact is also, you would see them complying, social media companies complying with local laws in India more easily. But in our case, Pakistan has also removed certain content. And what it remains to be seen is how are we going to figure out in this age of misinformation way to go ahead, and how are we going to create verifiable sources when fact checkers cannot, obviously they need their time to verify things. Then what do we do next? AI generative tools are not the answer, because some of the community notes that they've been giving are also incorrect. But and a lot of people have raised question on access community notes because they tend to be a little biased. So it remains to be seen what happens next.
Clearly, what's also coming across is there's an element of whether it's bias or corporate interests, etc. But we know that the legality of it, or so-called legality, where the difference in between India and Pakistan is that the companies do have a physical, registered, legal presence in the country, which changes in terms of the level of compliance with what we've seen of the takedown notifications that a lot of the Pakistani channel operators for YouTube received, or owners receive, a very vague public order, national security, unqualified, and you said, as you said earlier, they were complete blanket sort of entire channels, not a piece of content. So you really can't. It's not as if what do you know? How do you differentiate between what really is what have they taken objection to, or what was possibly is offensive? And then the other dimension, as you highlight, is also the fact that certain narratives or certain information that is put out there has, I mean, it's misogynistic, and we see plenty of that, where even in Pakistan, with respect to, Indian actresses, the kind of comments that have been made. And then, of course, in terms of interfaith harmony, and Muslims and Hindus on both sides then become casualties of biases and hate. And these narratives take root in social media as well. Going forward, though, given that this is still an escalating situation, given what the dynamics are, where fact checkers are going to obviously find challenges, platforms are not really responding the way that they should, and we are caught in between two state narratives and in trying to independent verification, and also where any kind of critical questioning of state narratives at this point are going to get people's patriotic credentials on both sides questioned as well. What is your suggestion on the path forward? What are the avenues, some of which you've already mentioned, to navigate the information that we will be receiving on social media, on our WhatsApp groups, and the very curious timing of the ban on X being lifted in Pakistan, just
Yeah.
as seriously as it was imposed now suddenly. And that also probably goes to speak to the whole image creation, information that you want out there, your citizens building a particular narrative which might probably be suiting you at this point in time, right? Versus when it didn't at the time that the ban was imposed. What are your thoughts on that as we close off?
Yeah, I think again, I think the responsibility lies on us as well. I mean, social media companies or also profit driven companies, they will look into the matter as much as they can, but we are emotionally, physically, in every aspect invested in all of this. So I would say the responsibility also relies on us, that we need to verify and fact check a lot of things on our own. I mean, fact checkers are doing the best that they can, but if there's information out there, particularly for instance, for now, there is information around drone attacks and on various locations. It's important to before posting, it's important to look at your sources, who it's coming from, what are these accounts? Are these accounts that have been made over the past, who have been sharing credible pieces of information before, or are they accounts that have been formed just now and have just started posting? And also the kind of content that they have been sharing on their social media platforms. It's very necessary to study the content that we're also posting, and not just share everything for the sake of sharing it. And that goes for WhatsApp groups, that goes for our X accounts, Instagram accounts, everything that we can find. And also reading through the lines, reading through headlines, reading and not just the headlines, but also the main body of what the message says. I think that's important, because a lot of the times, a lot of people don't do that. Doing a lot of reverse image search on Google, you can also use generative AI tools now. You can use Chat GPT. You can use these and check actually if the images itself are being used and replicated. For instance, we saw a lot of images from Gaza being used in the context of when these escalations happened in Pakistan. So in times like these, I think it's important to do your fact checking on your own as well, apart from relying on on the verifiable sources like Dawn and Geo and all of these other media organizations. And again, I just say that social media companies have a responsibility right now. As DRF, we have been escalating content to them, and we have been telling them that there are very real harms of the kind of content that exists online on these platforms at the moment. But uh, we haven't been receiving as much responses as we'd like. And since this is a developing situation, I think all eyes are on social media, and a lot of people are also looking at it as a source of information. So that's why I say that it's our responsibility to look at content. And as the ban on X is also now not in place, unofficially, officially, we don't know that yet. So I think we'd see more information particularly misinformation now, because there has also been no contact with platforms like X, and they don't comply with whatever is happening in terms of content removal. And I think it's a developing situation, and we shall see what happens. Yeah.
Thank you, Seerat, for making time. As we continue to monitor what is happening, and of course, both sides, people are living through the uncertainty. Information is going to shape perceptions and drive reactions, whether that's at the state level or how the citizenry is responding. And a lot of this information can also be manipulated. It can also be loaded. It can be false, or it can be incendiary. And this is something that we have to look out for in our own ways, at an individual level, collectively, what is available to us, because in real time, it's going to be very, very difficult, and the responses and reactions will come very, very quickly, which can do a lot of damage. Thank you so much. This is all we have on the DigiPod today.